Let's break the mold, start believing, and stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Welcome to Wild on 7, presented by Pilot Games. We're here until it's here.
All right, welcome back to Wild on 7th, your favorite Wild podcast, presented by Pilot Games. We've got a little bit of a different episode here today. We've got John King remote from Sin City. We'll have to check in with him from there. I'm in the studio here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. The snow has started to fall. I tell you what, I am not ready for that at all. Long trip into the studio today, but we're going to get into some wild talk, some good stuff. We'll check in on how things have gone in Vegas for Kinger. He was able to take in the Wild game yesterday, the Magic in Buffalo, too. And then we'll get to the Minnesota Wild, are they the kids under construction and what they have going on there? Kirill Kaprizov, perhaps, and how he's been swinging the hammer. We're going to check in from our boy Rat and a few other things. So with that, I'll bring in my man all the way from his hotel room. Nice, looks like a comfy plush robe you're wearing. And what is that? Do you have a sweater on under that robe?
Yeah, a little. I think you've lit this chest hair on fire before. The robe said one size fits most, and there was a second, but it did. It fits. I can get it around. So, yeah, and we're at the Wynn Casino for a guys trip this weekend.
So, how was? Give us the update. How was it? The gambling? Are you up? Are you down? Is it the sports book? The blackjack table?
We did well. The Wild kind of let us down in the last night. I had them to win by 2 over the Sharks, not how it went. And then I had them in a parlay with Boston, New York, and the Wild winning by 2. All of them did their job except for our construction crew, the Wild. So, but they picked up a win for me against Seattle, 1-0. So I would say 1 for 3 betting on the Wild out here.
So where'd you watch the game? The sports book?
The hockey was harder, so I watched it at like a Chinese restaurant on my phone, at a bar. You know, I kind of brought the hockey. I actually was at a roulette table, and I had the phone sitting on the purse hanger, and I was playing roulette watching the end of the Wild game against the Sharks yesterday. That's a pretty good moment.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's talk about the mood of the nation surrounding the Minnesota Wild. And, well, maybe before we do that, we should get into the mood at the sports book where you took in the Vikings game. The mood was ecstatic around that. And we talked about it last week. Kirk Cousins looks like, it seemed like he stole the Wild mojo from last year. Things over in Minneapolis going very similarly to how things did for the Wild a year ago. Come from behind victories, magic, never out of a game. You know, Kirk Cousins might seem pedestrian for 3 quarters, and all of a sudden he's Tom Brady 2.0 in the fourth quarter. They end up winning. The Buffalo game yesterday was amazing, and it almost was like a basketball game. You didn't have to watch the first 3 quarters, but then you just the last 5 minutes of the game took 2 hours, but it was all entertainment. But again, the chains were out on the airplane. Give us what it was like in Vegas, because I can only imagine how sweet it would be to take that game in Vegas.
It was amazing. They came back from the dead multiple times. The Jefferson catch, you just kind of looked at your buddies and like, can you believe this is happening? It did remind me of last year's start with the Wild. They're never out of it. And then you get, after the game, you get to go sit and wait for the social media gift pack to come out from the plane ride home, or who's wearing the chains. What's the article say? Catch of the year. What are Jefferson's MVP odds? Yeah, they're the gift that keeps on giving right now over across the river.
We've got to find a way to, and we talked about it, like under the cover of darkness, maybe daylight savings will be our friend. It's dark an hour earlier. Sneak over, cross the river, find those chains. Because originally I thought it was Kirk that had the mojo. He stole it somehow. I don't know what he did or how he got it. But yesterday it looked like the chains were on a different player, and it's not necessarily just Kirk. I kind of want to break that down a little bit too. So Kirk's not the one in the chains. Are they taking the chains away from Kirk, or is this one of the things where they just share it around. Everybody, it's kumbaya. They all take their turn with this. Is that their version of like the Wild hard hat? You remember like the river hat that the Wild had that they were passing around, or is that their version of it? If it is, we've got to find a way to get those chains. It looks like they might be expensive. We might have to take a loan out. But
they are real. They are real. I think the way to do it is under the guise of Let's Play Hockey. We get them to come over and do a Let's Play Hockey before a game, a tie-in with a charity so they can't say no. And then
bait and switch.
We take all of it. It's like the Ring and Lord of the Rings. If we get those chains, we're fine. And it seems, Ryan, like they're going with the older guy. So Patrick Peterson had him on yesterday.
Was that Patrick Peterson?
So I think the bit is the old dudes wearing the young dudes' chains and wiggling. I think that's the bit. And they just flip to the defensive old guy.
Well, there's a couple parts to the bit. It's the chains, but then it's also, I find it a little weird, but they have to have their shirt off. So this is post game on the airplane. Take your tarp off and then throw the chains on. Let's all celebrate. And I do like that yesterday Middleton tried to steal some of that mojo. It was an intermission interview, and he had that tarp off, heart rate monitor, nothing was puckered up, loose, ready to go. He had a nice 14-day mustache on. I don't know, man. What do you think about that intermission interview and how Middleton looked? Like, do you think he's on the right track?
I think we were winning the bet at that point. I felt really good. He seemed happy, whatever he was saying. Did he have any nice quotes in that interview? Do you know? Any little one-liners from Jakey?
No, I didn't. I was too distracted by the mustache and no shirt. We should make it mandatory that every intermission interview has to be without a shirt. That's just like a prerequisite. You can use a BioSteel towel over the shoulder, but we need the tarps to be optional.
Do you think if we work to deal with the Vikings just to have one of our guys come over and just put all the chains on, almost like going to a tanning booth, like you just go over there and wear the chains for 15 minutes and then come back to St. Paul? Do you think that's all we need to do?
Maybe that might be plan B. we just getting, grease the equipment guy. So when they're out practicing, we just go in, we grab every chain we can find, put it on somebody on the Wild, take a quick picture or two, put the chains back. They never know we're there. Speaking of that, we did something similar. You remember the Billy Guerin bit we talked about? Pulling the prank. We successfully executed it under the cover of darkness. The team went on the West Coast. We'll get into how everything went there. We went to the airport, stole a car. So I am a criminal now. I am. It kind of feels good to be a criminal.
Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, I shave my mustache, and then nobody will know. I'll be unrecognizable to everybody who maybe had me on camera and everything else. But for now, we'll keep it until they come looking for me, or I see like a caricature of, hey, wanted, and it's a dude with a mustache. I'll knock it down, then we'll be good to go. But we took the car, auto body shop, whistle tips. We put whistle tips on the vehicle, and we connected the horn to the brakes, and it was hilarious. So he came off the plane unsuspecting, boom. I don't want to ruin too much, but we successfully pulled it off.
Are you going to say who you got, or are you leaving that to be revealed?
We'll leave that to be revealed, but I will say it turned out it really wasn't much of a secret to anybody other than the individual that got it, that had it done to him. I was thinking, like, this was like an Ashton Kutcher, remember that show where he'd go around pranking? Yeah, punked. This is basically like you got punked. Everybody knew about it.
So what does a whistle tip do, and do you feel safe hooking the horn to the brakes? What if you took out one of our guys? What if he had like an accident?
Dude, I did have a ton of anxiety about this, so I couldn't sleep the night before because I was like, what happens if he's at a red light and he's on the brakes and it's just horn, and it happens to be like some angry dude that just gets out of the car and steamrolls him, like road rage. Like, I was just gonna go. But so we did have to ask the body shop, TGK, shout out to them for helping out. My buddy Ryan Peterson set it up, and they were able to set up a connection where we could quickly disconnect it, so it disabled the horn. So the horn was connected to the blinkers and the brakes. It's just the way that things were wired, and it had to be that way.
Jeez.
It was hilarious to capture, but yeah, so keep an eye out. That's coming up. But again, so to dial this back, I'm a criminal, so I have no problems going over to the Vikings stadium and stealing a couple of things, because apparently it's what I do now.
But you had a good theme for us, right? The Vikings, whatever. We're on the other side of the river. We're building it in St. Paul. You had this construction theme, right? You got a different way of looking at the season that I found to be pretty inspiring as you shared it with me. Walk us through this under construction hockey team.
Yeah. So we're kind of kids under construction right now. And as I look at it, this construction theme kind of plays its way through a lot of the lineup. And if you look at the guys that are injured, it's a lot of Sandpaper. Hartman, Greenway, Duhaime. Those guys rocking probably about 60 grit Sandpaper. You know, you take them out, and let's give Shaw some credit. Doer, those guys, they finish their checks. But they're probably about 100 grit, maybe 80 grit on their grittiest of days, right? So getting these guys back, I think you started to notice in the game, it's kind of been a grind. And, you know, they've had to force some of these players like Kirill Kaprizov, who's, I don't know what the finest grit Sandpaper there is. I think I've seen 320 before. You know, that's basically like a baby blanket. It's soft, but it's Sandpaper, like it polishes. Like that's how much grit that Kirill should have in those hands. But right now, I mean, he's having to do a little bit more. And then the other guys that we count on being real gritty, like Marcus Foligno and Eric Sinek, you know, I think that they roll, the baseline is about 60 grit, where, you know, you brush up against them and they're probably going to take a couple layers of skin off of you, right? Well, now they're playing maybe about 120 grit. Are they hurt, you know? And I know some of that's hard to follow the numbers in the grit, but basically the construction side of it is, you know, I think it's guys are having to do jobs that they're not necessarily set up for. And well, let's go to the LA game. Kirill Kaprizov swinging the hammer, right? And, you know, Drew Doughty, the inspector, and he's been all over Kirill Kaprizov. He might be public enemy number one to Kirill Kaprizov 97. I think it's been 2 years going where every time they play, those two are going at it. Kirill had enough. He swung the hammer. Luckily, he didn't have to sit down for a game, match penalty. I don't know, man. What did you see there? And how do you feel about Doughty going after 320 grit?
Well, I want to know what Doughty says to people, because he just gets them to lose their mind. You know, Kachuk, Kirill. I do think I remember we played LA early, right after Kirill got his deal done. And I think I remember on the broadcast catching Doughty, giving him some lip, because he had gotten off to a slow start. And I think there was like a moment where he sort of was like, really? You know, this is... You're one of the guys, really? So I think he must talk better than people, because he gets the snap show to happen with regularity. Have you heard anything from him when you're between the benches, or is he picking at scabs, or how does he get him to lose his mind?
Well, I think he plays him hard too. And his quotes after were, hey, I played Kirill hard before that, but he took the penalty, caught me up high. I think he's pretty savvy too, because he tried to play the media. So he played the game during the game, you know, physical, hard on Kirill, got under his skin, recognized it, drew the penalty, the match penalty. Kirill was gone, 5-minute major. And then post game, he's working it too, talking to the media. Yeah, he stuck me high. It's not okay. You know, those kind of things. So, but I think he just plays hard. I don't know that he's great verbally, like getting after guys or getting under their skin. I think it's just a consistent, you know, he's coming after you. And, you know, he's also one of those guys where he seems to get better when he's involved in that stuff. You almost have to let him sleep. Like when he gives the bye-bye wave, you know, he and Doughty feeds off that. He loves it. And I'm not sure, but he's the inspector. He shut down the Wild, and they're finished carpenters, so they're going to have to bring their tool belts another day next time they play. And we'll see. So we'll see if these guys get healthy, and getting back to the construction theme. Is Hartman going to be back? Greener, Duhaime? I think the Wild have played kind of a not a heavy game, not a terribly gritty game, but they've had to play a very structured game. So they've got the building framed up nice, 2x4s. They might have even gone 4x6 on the walls and making sure that everything's built and solid and sound. But they need a little bit more finished carpentry. They need some help putting up the crown molding and the wainscoting and making sure that, the woodwork looks great. And what I'm talking about is some skill and some offense up front. They've got a lot of guys that can pound a nail in right now, and they're struggling to score some goals, though. Kaprizov having to swing that hammer, that's not what you want, right? It's really not what you want at all. So we'll see. I think the general contractor, Billy Guerin, he's got a few dollars to play with, and the ball's in his court. What does it look like? It's not panic mode by any stretch of the imagination. After the 0-3 start, I think the Wild are 7-3-2 now in their last 12 games. So it's not, they're playing good. They're finding ways to win. And it's not like, hey, let's hit the panic button. But at the same time, I think if you're looking at the product right now, they need a spark. They need something. And it might be on the offensive side of the game, whether that be a scoring forward, somebody to play alongside Boldy or spark some of these guys. But what are you seeing? What do you think the general contractor needs to go out there and get?
Well, the thing I like is the shift. Last year was all about these guys loving each other. The culture in the room changing. They were all boys. We had this amazing regular season. This year, there seems to be a lot more sticking up for each other, having each other's back. A little bit of that fourth line, Sandpaper. Even Kirill, I predicted he would get in a fight and smoke someone this year. And I was watching him on the bench. I think it was against Anaheim when that game got feisty. He is looking over there like he doesn't want to just stand with a guy. He's frisky. And so I like that we might be doing things during the regular season that prepare us better for the playoffs. And even going back across the river with the Vikings, they're on this rocket ship ride, never losing, pulling rabbits out of hats. You can run into some different challenges when it really matters. And I kind of like that whether it's injuries or adversity, I think our off-road gears are going to be better when it gets to the real season.
I find myself feeling jealous, and I know the premise of the podcast here is to believe, to support, to find the good and understand that you have an effect on the product and the things that happen out on the ice, and you can help will this team to victory. I'm feeling jealous that it's happening across the river, and I want to say, I have the feelings that I want to just say to all the Vikings fans, hey, I know how this ends. It's a first round exit. They're not as good as you think they are, but at the same time, I've got to fight those feelings, right? We want the Vikings to win on this podcast, and we want them to have success. Hopefully we pass the mojo over there. We learn a couple of things on this side of the river. We take it, and it amounts to more than a first round exit in the playoffs.
Hey, man, if you can take an active NHLer's vehicle and mess with it and steal it and change it, I'm pretty sure you can get those chains for us, man. I think it's like a tanning bed. I think 15 minutes, I don't even think it matters who wears them. Throw it on Dewar. 15 minutes Dewar in the training table, wearing the chains. It's Lord of the Rings, man. We will be powered up. So let's find a way. We'll get over there.
Let's find a way. All right. Well, sticking to the construction theme, I'm gonna tape to tape myself. So this is gonna be Ryan from Ryan and Ryan. Aquarius Home Services. So if your house is under construction, hey, make sure you reach out to Aquarius Home Services. Whether you need help with your plumbing, electrical, water conditioning, HVAC, they do it all. For me, they treat the water. It's fantastic. I've got the Kinetico K5 system in the kitchen, the water softener in the basement, just loaded up the salt. I'm getting everything primed up because I put the rink out back. We'll have the well pump going, which they just installed for me probably about 3 weeks ago. A new well pump, making sure everything is primed, ready to go, because I need about 15,000 gallons to fill that rink up. But they're your trusted local experts, and you name it in your house. If it's electrical, plumbing, HVAC, water, they've earned the right to be recommended. Aquarius Home Services, check them out. They've solved my problem water, and I can't wait to get it out on the ice. Boom. What do you think?
Your rink looks great, by the way. It's extra big. It's almost like a square.
Yeah, it is big. It's going to be fun, and the boards are legit now. We've got 4-foot boards. I do have a little bit of slope that I have to fight, which is why there's so much water in there. But yeah, D1 rinks, they're the real deal. It's pretty easy to set up. Able to do it in a couple hours, and we haven't put the water in yet. We're waiting. I'm waiting for like the frigid cold, because it could be, you can wreck a rink in a real big hurry if you flood it and they only have a little bit of ice and then snow falls on it. So you've got to make sure that you kind of have cold weather, no snow, let it rip. But yeah, we're excited, and yeah, it's going to be great, man.
It's all about patience on the rink building. I had about half the years. I rushed it, and I was doing mortar work the entire winter. But if you just wait, it's fine, and then you're good for the whole season. Hey, can we do a little Kirill Appreciation Society here for a bit?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I don't know if people are on the Wild Instagram or if they watch all this stuff. They mic'd him up in St. Louis Park for the outdoor practice. And just watching this guy laugh, and he does this thing now, oi, 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 oi. I don't even know what that means. It seems to be a new OPA. He says, I'm from Siberia. I'm never cold, because they're playing outside. He's telling all the other guys, shoot in net. Shoot in net. Because for him, that's what happens. But he loves hockey. We have, I think with Russian players, oftentimes people worry that, they come to America and the only thing that they think exists in America is New York City, and they always have one foot out the door. This guy just is a rink rat. He loves playing hockey. He's so happy. He's like a kid laughing. And I think we just need to appreciate that we got a top 5 player in the league on the Minnesota Wild. He's a man-child. He's strong. I mean, I actually, at this point, I don't know if he has a brother. So if his brother shares enough, let's just draft his brother and bring him over and teach him. He's got to be good. If Kirill is this good, the apple can't fall that far from the tree, can it?
Well, why don't you try to billet his brother or something? I don't know how old is his brother. Do you know? Like, let's just get him over to the States. He can play in the USHL or wherever it is, and that way maybe I'll billet him, put him in the basement, and then have Kirill come over, skate the backyard rink. Like, this would be unreal.
I think that's a great idea. As I understand it, his brother is his best friend in the world, and he's in Russia still, I presume. So let's get him over. I mean, if the Stahl brothers, you got to drop off from 1 to 3 or whatever. If Kirill is what he is, a little work in the NA or the USHL, I think we got another top 6 forward on our hands, living out of the basement.
Right there. Yeah, no, it is. I do think at times we take it for granted how special Kirill is, and I think we saw it a little bit. Again, LA game, he gets kicked out, not suspended, comes back. The Anaheim game, the following game, and really puts on a show. And I think there's not a player that I've seen as effective at it as Kirill, that when he flips a switch and he decides he wants it, that he completely controls a game. And yeah, there's Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby and these other guys that are obviously elite talents. But I haven't watched those guys as closely as I've watched Kaprizov. And the impact he has on it, and his teammates and everything else, it's super special. But with that said, I think that we're kind of in I don't know the right word. It's not dangerous time, but it's a different time for 97 in a Wild sweater. I think I'm seeing moments of him at times trying to do a little bit too much. And that's not being critical of him. I think that's him wanting it and wanting to will it so much that he's playing with the puck. He's holding on to it all the time. Like, he feels like he has to be the guy to go into the corner, to fight off Drew Doughty, to bring it to the net, to set somebody up, and then find the rebound and put it in, and then have a terrific celebration. He needs to do that 4 times a night, right? So it seems like he's trying to have to do everything. And, right now with the Wild not scoring, he's getting so much attention from the opposition, and they're sending guys out there just almost to shadow him. And without somebody to protect him in the lineup, like baseball, you put somebody behind your number 3 hitter, the deep ball guy. So if you walk him, he hits a home run, whatever, how that works. The Wild need that number 2 punch right now. They need that guy where if you're putting everybody out there against Kirill, we're going to hurt you in our matchup line too. And I think that they're hoping that Marco Rossi was going to be that guy. He hasn't amounted to be that guy yet. And I think his game is trending in the right direction. I think you look at the goaltenders too and say, you have to give young guys some grace and some time to really start to figure it out before you start to grade them on a level playing field with everybody else in the NHL. Gustafsson's a good example of that, and he's still just a young player, 24 years old. He came first couple games after an off-season trade, settling into a new city, figuring things out. He wasn't great, and he didn't look that great in the net. But through time and work with Freddie Chabot, the goaltending coach, and patience from the staff, and I think that you've seen Gustafsson start to play better, and he looked better. San Jose game, he was great, and he played the way that he should play. He was quiet in the net. He's a big guy, so he has to play the percentages. He has to use his body. He did all of those things. It took 12 games for him to get to that point. Yeah, he's good in Anaheim, and he's continuing to get better. But I think Rossi's the same. You almost have to give him 15, 20 games before you say, okay, now I'm going to start to put you under a microscope. Now I can critique you. You've had some ups and some downs throughout the season. You've seen how things work. You're getting a real good taste of how things are in the NHL. Now it's time for you to produce. If you produce, you stick around, and if you don't, we'll see what happens. But that's where I think it's at with Rossi. And to get back to it, the Wild need to find a number 2 punch. And is it Rossi? Maybe at some point. How do they get that? We'll see. Boldy clearly is a guy that is going to be the number 2, 1A, 1B to Kaprizov at some point. But he might need somebody to play catch with. If we go back to the baseball references, he might need somebody to play catch with. And who's that going to be? Last year it was Fiala and Gaudreau, and they found some chemistry. I think they've switched lines, and they've tried to tinker with some things, but they haven't found that guy. And then now that's where maybe do we have to circle back? Does the general contractor, Billy Guerin, does he go out there and does he have to find a sub that can score, that can play catch with a guy like Boldy, that can provide that secondary scoring to help Kaprizov feel like he doesn't have to do everything. That's kind of what I see. I think that's where the state of the nation right now, when it comes to the Wild, wrapping all that stuff up, that's where they're at. That's what they need. And again, it's not panic. Like, I don't think anybody's panicking because they're 7-3-2 in their last 12 games. Everything's just fine. But going forward, it's unsustainable to win games 2-1, 1-0 across the board. You can do it in the short term. It's just a real stressful way to play. And the Wild, number 5 offense in the NHL last year, they can score goals, and they scored their way out of a lot of situations. They've got to find a way to get some offense back.
I hear what you're saying. I think the nice thing with 97, even though he's probably trying to do too much, is when you're in one of those games against a team that's a little worse than you need to win. There's just games where he just decides we're going to win. And whether that Anaheim game is a great example. I think if he stays in that LA game, he might have done the exact same thing in that game, where we're just we're slow dancing with some team that we need to get points on. To have him in your lineup is huge. What I see out of the mix now is you're getting a lot from the the Iowa Wild guys, we'll call them. We're getting a lot out of the depth guys. They've been great. The apprentices have been great. You're getting what you need out of Zuki and Kirill up top, and probably Ek to a degree. And then you've got this huge group of guys that have been injured that were overachievers maybe last year. The Felinos, the Hartmans, even Dumba, Brodeen, right? You're not seeing points on the score sheet. Spurgeon, you're not seeing, when Mason Shaw has 5 points in 10 games and he's near the top of your scoring, your statistics, that doesn't bode well for the long term. So we're missing that kind of second grouping of verified, legit NHL players. They just haven't been able to show up yet this year.
Right. And let's give a shout out to Shaw, because he's been great. He was fun to talk to on last week's episode, no question about that. And maybe we gave him a little bit of a bump. Maybe he's feeling some confidence, but he went on that road trip, and I think he got a pat on the back and turns around, and it's the Wild staff, and they said, you know what, you can check out of the hotel, buddy, and you can go ahead and find yourself a place. And to give all the listeners, and the CBA has maybe changed a little bit from when I played, but it's that's maybe the best comment you can have, or the best conversation you can have at that point in your career, because the CBA says that that when you get called up from the American Hockey League, you have 56 days that you have to stay in the hotel, or that they can keep you in the hotel before they tell you to get a place. So it can be up to 2 months that you're sitting there in limbo, not knowing, back and forth, living on continental breakfast in a dry hotel room, wishing you had a humidifier. But now he got the tap, and it's been a couple of weeks. He's played some great hockey, and they said, find a place. So now he can go out, find himself a place to live, and it's kind of one of those things that reassures you that, hey, you've impressed us to the point where you're a part of this club now. You're not going anywhere. So Mason Shaw is going to be wearing the Minnesota Wild sweater, not the Iowa Wild sweater, presumably for the rest of the year. But you never know how things go, but congrats to him. I think he deserves it. Now, on that note, all things are going, you can have it. Have you ever heard the phrase, you can have it all, you just can't have it all at once? That may be Mason Shaw.
I like it.
That may be Mason Shaw right now, because a lot of things are going his way and he's played good hockey, but he did have a check on Shimmick in the game, San Jose game, where shoulder right to the head a little bit. Shimmick had to leave the game, and this one might be reviewed. The camera angle isn't great on it, but if they review it, and we're recording this podcast Monday morning before we're going to hear on how this comes down, but Mason Shaw could be taking a seat for a game or two based on this hit. So keep your fingers crossed that Shaw's in the lineup. He might have an extra day or two to look for a place, or a day off where he can go shopping. So if you're a realtor, go ahead and reach out to Mason Shaw. He may not be in Nashville come tomorrow. But with that, I think you're right. The apprentices have been great, but it doesn't bode well for the Wild if the apprentices are the guys and the Finnish carpenters. You've got to have the NHL guys step up and do a little bit more. Let's circle back and I want you to reintroduce the audience to our buddy, Rat. Rat is, and I'll give you a quick little setup. Rat's a guy that loves hockey, loves the Wild, but he can be volatile in his feelings towards the Wild. So he's a teammate of yours, and tell everybody about our boy Rat.
Rat, we played beer league together. As a matter of fact, last Tuesday, Rat was putting his gear on, and his bag started leaking, and he realized he had a beer that had exploded in his bag, and he was frantically running through the Hippodrome locker room trying to throw the can in the garbage. And you can't do that because you can't have beer in the Hippodrome, so it was a whole deal. But Rat is he's our spirit animal. Last year he told us everything was going to be okay. This is how it's going to be now. We're just going to keep winning, and then we're going to win the Stanley Cup. He looked me in the eye and was like, just walk with me. I'm carrying you. There's only one set of footprints. I'm going to carry you to the cup. That didn't end the way we wanted it. Thank you, St. Louis Blues. But so this year he's much more, he's been shocked by the electric fence a little bit. So he's tentative. So I asked Rat this morning, I said, where are we at? What's the mood of the nation? He says, the Wild, there just hasn't been that many sparks this year. They're missing something. He says, I don't see them getting top 3 in the division, and I give them a 45% chance to make the playoffs, which is just amazing. 45%, right? So he wants Boldy to get somebody with him to give him some magic, and he wants to keep seeing Zuki and Kirill playing off each other like they did behind the net in Anaheim, like Tango and Cash. But yeah, he's concerned. He thinks middle of the road team fighting to make the playoffs. That's what it's a long drop from where he was last year, where he was opening the pearly gates for us, Carts.
So yeah, what's Rat's floor? So 45% chance of making the playoffs. Like, where is this baseline? Like, he's a fan of the Wild, so like, is he always gonna have? So like Northern Minnesota, if you look at it, there's like always a 20% chance of rain. It's just like cooked in to the forecast. Like, what percent chance is Rat have cooked into the Wild making the playoffs? You know, so is he leaving himself some wiggle room, like 6%? So it's 51% now if the Wild win a game or two. Like where's Rat at?
Clearly, the follow-up question is why 45%? You know, why not 50-50?
Right.
But like, let's just say you might imagine Rat's not a big texter. Like, I can't do follow-up. Like, I can probably text Rat once every 2 weeks to see how he's doing and get 5 sentences back. But yeah, there's a choice there. I think he's maybe saying it's a 50-50 chance, but if I had to gun to my head, I don't think they make it. I don't know. I don't know how you end up with 45%.
That's what it seemed like. He wanted to say that he doesn't think that they're going to make the playoffs, but he wanted to keep it close. So he's like 45%. Just knocks out 5%. Oh, that's fantastic. So again, Rat Beer Leaguer, how has he been playing? Like, how's his confidence as a player?
You know, I got to say, he was on fire last week after the beer exploding in his bag. I've never seen the guy skate faster. He was phenomenal. So maybe I don't know. Maybe we can pull. Maybe Rat could get the chains. Rat could maybe get the chains. They don't even know. I don't even know his name.
Dude, Rats know how to get into places they shouldn't be.
They do. They do. I think he's our guy.
Rat's our guy to get into Minneapolis, get these chains, and then all of a sudden 45 will turn into 95% chance they make the playoffs. Let's make it happen, Rat. So I just have one question on it. So the beer exploded in Rat's bag before practice or before the game?
I don't know why. Yes, I don't know why. It wasn't even cold. But it must have popped or something. And then he was just losing his mind. His gear's all soaked in beer. There's beer all over the floor. It was a true beer league moment.
He felt the pressure to perform. So he had a down moment and he needed a rebound, and he did. Well, good for him. If Rat wanted to pair that beer with a nice snack or a good chip and dip, like, where would he go?
Well, I think Rat, the fact that he has beers in his hockey bag loose, he should maybe mix in a sensible snack. So maybe some veggies and some Jimmy's salad, Jimmy's vegetable dips, like dill, the spinach, maybe the ranch. There's also one called Holy Smokes, which is a dip you can put on your sandwiches and burgers, and it's got that smoky flavor people love. But I would just say, Rat, you got a bunch of loose cans of beer in your bag. You don't wash your gear. I think let's just have a sensible snack tonight. Get some of these Jimmy's vegetable dips. Get on the right track. Get over 45% optimism. And I would just tell him, don't you be messing with the dressing. That's Jimmy's salad dressings and dips. Find them at Cub.
That was fantastic.
How'd you like that one?
I thought it was fantastic.
Tidy.
That was fantastic. Yeah. So
can I give you a couple Vegas stories, Carts?
Yeah, would love it.
So we went to the Knights game on Saturday, and we were trying to figure out how to bet because we're not Knights fans. They're playing the Blues. We decided to bet on the Knights because for a lot of reasons. They're the home team. We're in Vegas, and the Blues are not our friends from last season. But everywhere we went, the signs were that we should bet on the Blues. Jon Hamm was in our casino. He's in the elevator with us. He's a huge Blues fan. He's wearing a St. Patrick's Day St. Louis Blues jersey to the game with a bunch of these ladies, and it's like obvious we should bet on the Blues, but we didn't want to. You know how you don't want to mess with the juju? I don't even know what juju is, but you don't want to mess with the juju. So we stayed on the Knights, and they were beat by the Blues. We end up bumping into Jon Hamm the next day, and he in his pocket on a piece of cardboard, he has the starting lineup, which he walked into the Blues locker room and screamed at him. So he's got it written in Sharpie, the whole drill. Binner in the cage, Thomas, Kyrou, he's got the whole thing. And so I don't feel good about that. Should we have gone the other way? Or you can't bet on St. Louis after last year, right?
You can't, but that's like betting against the Vikings and their chains right now, because I think Jon Hamm is what the chains are to the Minnesota Vikings, to the St. Louis Blues. He was at the Winter Classic game. He was up in the media press box last year. He had his legs crossed. He was holding court. Everybody loved him. And the Blues just rinsed the Wild in that one. All of a sudden, they go to Vegas, and they're playing. Vegas is the number one team in the NHL right now. The Blues are in the cellar in the West, if I'm not mistaken. So the worst playing the first in the West. Jon Hamm comes to town, reads the starting lineup, and all of a sudden the Blues win a hockey game. Jon Hamm is the chains for the St. Louis Blues. Maybe we also need to find a way to steal Jon Hamm. If we did steal Jon Hamm, do you think you could throw him, and how far? I mean, Billy Guerin could throw him 20 yards, but how far could you throw Jon Hamm?
That question did come up on my text thread, as you might imagine. I don't know. John's a pretty big guy. I will say, as a hockey fan, though, this dude is a legit hockey fan. Like, he's at the roulette table betting on numbers of Blues players. Like, I can hear him say Thomas, and he's setting it on, Thomas's number. And he just talks to you. When we last saw him at the casino, he says, I'll see you guys soon. State of hockey. So, like, the next time we play the Blues in St. Paul, he might just be there, being Jon Hamm. So, yeah, he's good for hockey. I think you're right. They were 7-3, the Knights, against 3-7 when we made this bet, and they just got rinsed by the Blues. So I don't know, but I guess the signs were there. Hamm, I couldn't throw Hamm. He's a big dude. I don't think I could. Maybe I could push him 3 yards, but I couldn't throw him that far.
I'm picturing, where you interlock your fingers and then they step on your hand and then you just like lift up and throw as they jump, kind of like a backflip into a pool. Maybe you could get them half a dozen yards.
It's like your daughter in the pool, right? So they kind of jump out of your hand.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe. I think you could do that, Karts. I don't know if I could do that, but next time I see him, I'll ask him.
Yeah. Hey, can I just throw you quick? And for those of you that don't know, we asked Bill Guerin how far he can throw a ham. And what was his answer? It was like 20 yards, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, he still needs to prove that.
Yeah, so maybe...
He might be able to.
Well, he can throw a ham. He can throw a ham 20 yards, no question about it. What was my number? 16? We got to go with video review because I do think it was further than 16. So I'm kind of thinking you're snubbing me a little bit. I thought it was 19, but whatever. That's fine. We'll talk about it another day.
It's in between.
Yeah, it's somewhere in between. But okay, before we get out of here, I want to talk about. So I think Steele has started to play some good hockey. And I think we're starting to see signs of, he was a first-round draft pick in Anaheim. And I think he produced fine in Anaheim. And he went through a couple coaches and, a management change and kind of fell out of favor there. And the Wild were able to get him, late in free agency. It's one of those scary times where if you don't go day one, early on day two, you're in like this gray zone. You don't know what's going to happen. You could sign a one-way, you could be on a PTO, but you end up having very little leverage at that point. So they end up getting Steele at a pretty affordable number, and he comes to town, and he looked good in training camp, but then he kind of went away. And, through, I don't know if it's chemistry with some of these guys, comfort, finally settle into a new spot, much like Gustafsson is, we're starting to see him, and he's playing with pace. I actually think there's a chance he might have been the Wild's best player on Sunday night. Hey, he's back. So we're gonna have to edit
Somebody
this a little bit.
called me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, somebody called me.
That's what happens when you're a popular dude, man. People call you.
Yeah, sorry. Hopefully he doesn't call back.
All right, so Sam Steele, I think he's the Wild's best player on Sunday night. He's been good, and he's one of those guys that I think the Wild are going to have to lean on. They took a bet on a couple of guys, Tyson Joe, Sam Steele, veteran guys that maybe with more opportunity could grow into something. Joe's out of the lineup right now. I think he's battling through some things. He's going to have to find his way into it. Steele has been good, and he's been great for that line. So we'll see where those guys go, but I want to give him a shout-out for being great. But sounds like you got a flight to catch, my man. Give us one last shot of that chest hair. Appreciate you calling in from Vegas. Boom. Okay, maybe I got to be careful what I wish for. That was a little too much, but yeah. Thanks for calling in, my man. Good chat, and travel safe.
We're here.
Till it's here.